In today's episode, we caught up with Marc Hurlbert, Chief Mission Officer of the Breast Cancer Research Foundation in New York, and Leah Eshraghi, who is the Clinical Research Director at the Dr. Susan Love Foundation in Encino, California. Marc and Leah traveled to KGI recently to talk with students about internships and job opportunities. Through this interview, they talk about career pathways in nonprofit organizations and also describe their first impressions of KGI. If we could have you both start off by just introducing where you work, what your role is, and we'll start off with Marc.
Hi, I'm Marc Hurlbert. I'm the Chief Mission Officer at the Breast Cancer Research Foundation in New York, New York. In my role, I oversee all the granting of the funds that we do all over the world. This year, BCRF is funding $59.5 million in research to 275 scientists across the United States and around 15 countries around the world.
Hi, my name is Leah Eshraghi. I'm the Director of Clinical Research at Dr. Susan Love Research Foundation. We are in Encino, California, and I oversee the clinical research that we're doing at the foundation and our collaborations, our Army of Women program, and our Health of Women study.
And from your perspectives, obviously with foundations of varying sizes and different roles, where do you see KGI fitting into this and the potential that's here with our students involved in many different fields?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of opportunities for KGI students and graduates to get involved in the nonprofit sector. About 20 years ago, starting around 2000, more and more nonprofits that focus on curing diseases from very small foundations with $1 million or $2 million a year budget to large foundations that have hundreds of millions of dollars a year. But more and more they have MDs, PhDs, master degree science experts on their staff helping run their program. So it's a great field. Most KGI students probably think of the pharmaceutical industry or the academic industry or government like NIH or the National Science Foundation. But the nonprofit is a fourth sector that really should be of great interest to many KGI students.
And I would say that the Dr. Susan Love Research Foundation is unique in that as a breast cancer organization, we actually conduct our own clinical research. And so there's a lot of opportunities for people with varying skill sets to come in and work on projects in different aspects of it. In terms of any of the projects that we're working on, we're looking for collaborators. And if there's potential for interns or for people to come in for some, to get started after they're finished with their graduate degrees, there's always really good opportunities to really get your hands dirty with the work that we're doing, because in a small environment, you don't have one role, you have 10, and you're able to really think outside the box and utilize your skills and also your creativity to move the projects forward.
And this morning you got to visit with a few KGI students, obviously eager to learn more about your foundations. And one item that I wanted to pinpoint through some of Marc's presentation was the difference between people-based funding and project-based funding. Could you elaborate on that for our listeners?
Yeah, so traditionally, the National Institutes of Health, NIH, many of you maybe have applied for fellowships or project-based funding, R01s and typical programs. They focus on a project where there's three specific aims, aim 1, aim 2, aim 3, and what methods are you proposing to use, and it's very focused on specific projects. At the BCRF, we fund people-based work, not project-based work. We scour and have an invitation-only program. We scour the world, quite frankly, at conferences and the literature, looking for experts, and then they're invited to be funded by BCRF. And when they're funded, the grants are $250,000 for 1 year at a time. We try to only recruit people with the intent of funding them for multiple years. But we're funding the person. And what that means is they can start their project with us, and we like to know what they're working on. So we do know what is aim 1, aim 2, and aim 3. But in their research process, a week into it, a month into it, if they find a discovery or they have an experiment in their lab and they want to shift directions, they're allowed to. So it's people-based funding, not wedded to the primary project. There are other examples in the nonprofit world, like the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. The HHMI Investigators is another example of people-based funding, not project-based funding.
And Leah, a question for you is, obviously you and Marc traveling here together, can you elaborate on how Breast Cancer Research Foundation and the Dr. Susan Love Research Foundation are a good fit to be presenting as one?
Well, Dr. Susan Love Research Foundation has been fortunate to get grant money to do work with the Army of Women. With our Army of Women online recruitment program, we help researchers around the country who are doing breast cancer research studies. We have a pool of over 381,000 women and a few men who've signed up to receive emails from us. And so some of the work that we've been doing with BCRF has been to do a redesign and relaunch of our website. We're working on changing up some of our the materials that we send out to the Army of Women members in terms of our email, and looking toward the future of expanding and increasing diversity in terms of racial and ethnic diversity as well as age diversity into the Army of Women. So there's been a really good partnership there to work together to expand on that.
Any further first impressions of KGI, just from the students you've met and the facilities here in Claremont?
Yeah, no, it's a very exciting group of students we met with this morning. And I told Diana and the leadership that the KGI is probably a program I should have applied to 20 years ago, maybe in a future iteration. But no, in the nonprofit sector, what's really exciting, it's almost like being at a biotech startup or some tech startup company. You get to wear a lot of hats and do a lot of things. So over my 18 years in the nonprofit sector, I think of myself as a CPA doing the accounting, an MBA doing the business development, an MPH doing public health research. But at the end of the day, I'm a biological scientist with a PhD in pharmacology. So I think the KGI students, it's a great potential partnership for internship opportunities and future employees.
And I think I was really impressed. There's just a lot of cross-sectional interest. So you've got one background and then you come to KGI to expand and to kind of explore a different area and use the skills that you've learned in your first degree to move on to something else and to really branch out. And so I think that's really exciting. And I think that falls in well with what we do at the nonprofits, because like Marc said, you are wearing many different hats, and to have different types of experience and education and to be able to put that all together, I think is really important in the nonprofit. And especially with the smaller entrepreneurial ones like we are, it's really important to have that.
And to stay on the topic of careers and whatnot, from your journey, everyone's got their twists and turns, but from your journey, any advice to KGI students as they go forward beyond their graduate programs here?
Yeah, so I would encourage KGI students to look at the nonprofit sector as a viable, opportunity for working in the sciences. In my 18 years in the industry, I've trained dozens of PhD and MD graduates that entered the nonprofit world. Some missed, the wet lab bench and being, hands-on in a lab, so they went back to academia or industry. But many have stayed and grown up and gone to other foundations over the time. So it's just a great sector I think a lot of academic students don't think of.
And I completely agree with that. And I would think it's really keeping your options open and thinking outside the box when you start looking for a position. When I finished up my MPH, I started looking at jobs and just kind of kept things open and wasn't even specifically looking at the nonprofit sector and ended up falling into it. And I've been there since 2010. So I think it's a really great opportunity to open the door to being able to have a real hands-on experience and creativity along with the science background as well. And if you're interested in working with people, you can work with people and have those connections. So it really depends on, what your future goals are and how you'd like to interact.
Well, thanks again, Marc and Leah, for visiting KGI today. Enjoy the rest of your time, and we can't wait to watch the relationship grow as time moves along.